Good evening, folks. This is The Weird Part, and I am your host, Vincent Treewell. My special guest this evening is Adam Taula. We had the good fortune to meet 8 months ago at the Strange Reality Conference in Nashville, Tennessee, put on by Adam Sane and Seraphiel Stevenson from Conspiranormal. And I've been meaning to get back with Adam and talk with him in detail. So it's only taken 8 months because I am the heavyweight champion of procrastination. But please join me in welcoming special guest Adam Tola. Welcome
Thanks for
aboard, Adam.
having me. Thank you.
Oh,
It's only
my
been eight
privilege.
months?
Yes, yeah, I think that works out about
Yeah,
right.
it does feel like yesterday though, kind of.
Oh,
That's crazy.
absolutely. Time has flown. Um,
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me, and uh I'm excited to chat with you again.
oh, absolutely. It feels like we just kind of broke off like what we were talking about last night, but it's
Yeah.
actually several months ago. Yes. Um,
Yeah.
so, being as specific or as general as you care to be, what's your paranormal origin story? How did you get interested in the stuff that we talk about here and that we talk about at Strange Realities and on your podcast?
When I was a kid growing up, I grew up in Orange County, California, in this little two-bedroom house in the bad part of town. And I think we had an episode of Cops filmed in our driveway once, if that gives
Oh,
you any
wow.
idea. But I don't know why I told you that, but I just thought it was important. So when I was growing up as a kid, it was I was seeing a lot of people in and around the house coming and going, not knowing what I was actually looking at. It was almost like a train station of people coming and going. And so when I was younger, it kind of goes to why my channel's called The Paranormal Polynesian on YouTube. It's because I've always been kind of a haunted person, and I've always had these paranormal experiences with ghosts, with spirits. And to the point where my parents put me in special classes in elementary school. They thought that I was having learning issues, uh, and I wasn't. I was actually seeing things. Like I would see. I just remember a lot of children and things coming and going around the house. And it would freak my mom out. And I think she finally figured out that it was not an imaginary friend. There were things that I was actually seeing. And I kind of always dealt with that. And then I got in my like teens and 20s, and then it kind of just disappeared. Like I stopped having the paranormal experiences. And so because of that, I got started with a paranormal group, because I wanted to know if I was really losing my mind when I was a kid, or I made it all up, or if I really did have this ability, or if these things were real. And when I joined that group, they were called Utah's Unexplained in Salt Lake City. I was able to finally go on investigations and use the scientific approach to things that I'd never done before, and was able to kind of discover that, oh yeah, there's stuff going on that we don't know about, that we can't explain. And so it was kind of a cool, redeeming thing to do for me. Uh,
It was probably pretty positive to find out that other people have these experiences too.
oh yeah, I didn't even know this was back in the day when that show Ghost Hunters had just started, and I never watched a paranormal. I mean, we had Unsolved Mysteries growing up. Of course, I
Hell
love
yeah, love
Unsolved
Unsolved Mysteries.
Mysteries, my favorite. Uh, but finally getting to, actually investigate and go to these places I'd seen on TV, it was so eye-opening, and I learned so much. And uh, yeah, it was just a really cool experience to meet like-minded people. I thought I was just the only weirdo in town, but apparently there's a lot more. So it's great.
People can trash the internet all they want to. If you use it right, it connects you with like-minded people that
Yes.
you might never meet in person otherwise. And yet here we
Yeah.
are, you know.
I know.
Um, it's not all bad. It really can open you up to a whole different world, and I love that about it.
I miss those message boards and things. This was way before any Facebook or, I mean, I think there was MySpace, but I remember just meeting people through message boards and AOL chat rooms and just really forming a cool little community of people. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, and as you just mentioned, you have your own podcast. I say your own, it's actually, I think, somewhat larger than my own. Um,
No, it's just a little thing. Um, but yeah,
Tell us, what do you do there?
so the podcast I do, it's separate from my channel actually. I just put some of the episodes on there, but it's called To Believe or Not to Believe. That is the podcast. And little Shakespeare. So my friend Faye, she's a very big skeptic. She doesn't believe in any of the paranormal, none of it whatsoever. And then there's me, and we have this podcast where we'll pick a subject, every week, and we'll kind of just go from there. And we just have an open discussion. It's a lot of comedy. It's not, we don't take ourselves seriously. There are some good, scary stories and interesting cases, but it's a lot of humor. And that's kind of how
Something
my channel is
sometimes
as
a
well.
little lacking in the paranormal world.
Yeah. People take themselves really seriously in this business, okay? And that's the other thing. They treat it like a business sometimes, and I'm not here for any of that. I've already done that. I've done the paranormal investigating with groups for decades. And now I'm at the point in my life where I kind of just want to go out and see the world. And if I find a weird place along the way with a cool story, I'm of course going to share it with the channel. And I catch paranormal evidence all the time actually on my channel when I don't even mean to. If I'm staying at like a hotel or when I went to Gettysburg the other day, I'll just capture things on the camera. I am a magnet, like I said, for paranormal activity. So that's kind of where that all comes from. And just, I love getting to learn about a place, but just learning about it as a normal person and not being, you know, so uptight about everything because there's just so much of that.
A lot of categorization that
Yes.
is this a ghost? Is this an alien? Is this a cryptid? And what is that? There's a lot of boxing here that putting things in boxes that I often feel is very counterproductive. And I love it whenever there's a chance to kind of not have the boxes and just talk about the very weird things that really happen.
And I think I might have been one of those people back in the day where I kind of put them in boxes myself
Oh
when I
yes,
was
me
much
too.
younger. But now that I've lived life and stuff, I really think it's a lot more connected than people think. And it's really changed my outlook on all the paranormal. Um, I find myself going back and forth like what I think all this is every you know few years or so. I'm just like, oh, because that's the thing. Like nobody really knows for sure on most of this, and that's what makes it so
Absolutely.
appealing.
And that is the appeal. If we knew everything, if they brought out Bigfoot in a steel cage and said, "Well, we got him. There you go."
Yeah.
We're gonna take his DNA and find out what his deal is. It would ruin it. It'd be like, okay, well, that was a
Listen,
good
like
story for a week.
the only way you can get me to go camping is if you have like there's like the underlying premise of a possible Bigfoot encounter, then I'll go. I'm not a big outdoorsy kind of person, but yeah, it's just like it's a fun um just way to connect with nature and just other people that are into this interesting kind of weird stuff. So
Absolutely.
if it just showed up in a cage one day, what's the fun in that? You know?
Exactly. That would ruin the whole mystery. And he'd
Yeah.
just be, his DNA would get sequenced and we'd say, well, he's a Australopithecus and that's proved. End of story. And we'd all stop being interested in it because we could just go see him at the zoo if we wanted to, but it
Yeah.
wouldn't be the same. I
No.
don't think that's going to happen anytime soon,
Oh, I don't either.
by which
No.
I mean ever. But
Yeah.
yes,
Not in my lifetime.
no, no way. Um, Let me see here. So, in all of this, I mean, you're kind of a lifelong experiencer, would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I definitely have seen a lot of things in my life. More on the hauntings kind of realm, uh, but definitely UFOs, cryptid things. Uh, let's see, Faye and I did an episode the other day about Dogman, which I know you love
Please
Dogman,
elaborate,
right?
because I'm
Oh,
told,
I mean,
trending these days. But yeah, go ahead.
no,
I'd love
I
to hear
don't
a
have any.
firsthand Dogman experience.
Oh, I don't have any myself, but we were just talking about him, and I'm like, man, this is the name did kind of make me crack up on the podcast a few times. Like I kept laughing at the name because I kept picturing what it is that people are saying they're seeing out in Michigan and stuff, and it just kind of makes me giggle, and I can't help it. But when I get down to it and I think about it, I'm like, oh, that's got to be kind of terrifying if you see Dogman walking around. I don't think I'd want to see that in real life. But
No.
I'm so fascinated about just the different cryptid creatures and the different regions of, especially here in America, that people are seeing and the different names for them. And I just think it's very fascinating, and like the links with maybe the native culture in the area. I live in Utah, and we have tons of reservation land here by me, and a lot of talk of skinwalkers, and of course Skinwalker Ranch is just up the road from me, so it's not it's not a new it's definitely not a new thing to me in my life. It's always kind of been a part of it.
To the extent that you can, what can you tell us about the whole alleged and like the more credible Skinwalker stories that are out there? Because I
um
kind of think the ranch has a lot of complications. That they
it
may have
does.
been testing some things there. By they, I mean the government or the corporations that the government has, outsourced this to.
Yeah.
And that, but there still is a like core indigenous belief in skinwalkers. And I don't claim to be any kind of expert in that, but it just seems like something's going on in that neck of the woods.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. I never will. And part of me doesn't want to, because that's actually the place that got me thinking for the first time in my life that, oh, maybe all of these things are connected, because I was seeing all of the things happening in this area of Utah. And I'll just give a few examples, like the orbs of light. We would see those out in the sagebrush. And by the way, Skinwalker Ranch is, it's a cool place, whatever, but you can't really get there. You can't get on the property unless, you know, you are on that TV show, I guess, or whatever. But I'm here to tell you that the whole Uinta Basin, the whole area for miles and miles is affected by whatever's going on. You don't have to be in this one little parcel of land. It's going on to all the locals. The our friends that live on the reservations, they don't leave their trailers at night for a reason. And I mean, I truly believe something's going on. I've seen things that I can never explain. Um, Terrifying things that yeah, it's to the point where I didn't go for probably 13 years, because the
Wow.
last time I had gone had affected me so negatively. And there's something about the area. I mean, there's interdimensional stuff going on, poltergeist activity, cryptid for sure. Uh, I don't know what it is. There's so many theories, from radiation to, just the ley lines. So it's just one of those places that, yeah, I don't think we ever will finally get the whole story on it, ever. And that's fine.
And that
But
may be one of those things that keeps its secrets and it's just
yeah.
not going to give them up.
Well,
Yes.
I tell people all the time, some things just aren't meant to be figured out, and that's okay. Um, but yeah, you here in Utah for sure. there's so much that is fine just be that I'm fine not figuring out because there's so much strangeness here in the state. And I'm sure it has to do with, geographically where we're located and all of the crazy formations and mountains and the minerals and everything that are here. So, I mean, if people want to come out in that area to see things, you don't have to go on the property. There's actually a new campground they just opened up, I think, where you can go camping, like next to Skinwalker Ranch on a little piece of land with your tent. So if you really would like to go out there and see if you can find something, I'm sure you can Google it and find out the name and the rates. I think it's pretty cheap, like $60 a night or something. So it's
You
it's
paint a
there for
pretty
you.
picture, but I don't think I'm going to be touristing there anytime soon.
I it's one of those places that I truly don't feel safe when I go to. And when I was paranormal investigating for all those years, I never felt like I was in danger physically, but out there near Skinwalker Ranch and places like that, I don't really, I can't say that there. There's something going on that's not meant for me, and that's fine. Because, yeah, I've had friends that have gone out there and were never the same again. And actually, I had a friend that went out there camping one night and he got a brain tumor right after he came home, and he the radiation that he had gotten somehow while he was out there was enough that it killed him. He
Wow, I'm
passed away
sorry.
shortly
Wow.
after. And he had a story, it's not my story to tell, but the things that he said he saw when he was there those nights, it really makes me wonder if the place actually did cause this. So there's a lot of dark stuff going on over there, so I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I'm okay not going out there unless I have to, or for a show or something. I've had
And
people interview me for different shows and stuff, and I'll go out and do an interview, but I don't usually, I won't stay out there at past dark usually anymore.
I cannot blame you. And I wish I could say that this is the first time ever I've heard of somebody having what you might call a close encounter of the fourth kind, or
Hmm.
some, very up close and personal interaction with what we broadly call the paranormal, and then getting brain cancer. But
Yeah.
it's unfortunately there is a trend for that. And
Well, I didn't even
in
know that.
Wisconsin, Stephen Schneider, aka Recluse, has done some work on this that I found absolutely fascinating. But even in my own home state of Wisconsin, and I don't have the names and dates at my fingertips because I didn't know it was going to come up, but there was a local police officer who reported that he encountered UFO, and he was shot with a green beam, in his words, and he died from cancer within like a year or so. And
Wow.
there is a tendency among people who've had really up close encounters with the phenomena. I'm thinking of the Cash Landrum incident in Texas. I think it's Texas,
Okay.
where these two ladies, one of whom last name was Cash, the other was Landrum, and they got radiation burns and what appeared to be like radiation sickness from seeing what they described as UFO escorted by black military helicopters. And
Wow.
that can unspool into a whole definitely separate show.
Yeah.
But the health effects, and specifically cancer and exposure to radiation, seem to be like an almost occupational hazard of dealing with this type of stuff, which is begs a lot of questions. You know what I mean? A whole lot.
Yeah. I Yeah, I didn't sign up for that whole thing, so I'm not trying to
Exactly.
get a brain tumor today.
No.
But and
And
the friend I told you about, that's not, I mean, I have multiple people that I know that have had similar health issues crop up immediately after coming to Skinwalker Ranch. And You know, the most the most recent time I went out there was probably 2 years ago was the last time. And I was there with the guys. I was being filmed for Blind Frog Ranch, that television show that's
Oh,
on.
yes.
They were interviewing me for that, and so while I was there, I spent the night at my friend's. Ryan, he has a ranch. He bought the property adjacent to Skinwalker, and he has a research center there. It's called Space Wolf Research. If anyone wants to check it out, Ryan's Burns is his name. He's awesome. He's written books on Skinwalker Ranch, and he's very knowledgeable of the place. But he's who I used to go out with back in the day. This was back when Bigelow owned the land and was doing his testing. So back in like '08, '07, so quite a while ago. And when I went there to stay on his property, I took my sister-in-law, and we were just stargazing, and we did see a lot of things in the sky. But the thing I do remember is we filmed it for the channel, and we left at like 10 o'clock at night, and we drove into town, which is Vernal, is the name of the town. Dinosaur capital, I think, of Utah,
Oh,
by the way.
wow.
And we didn't get to the hotel till like 1 in the morning. So, and it was a 15, 20-minute drive. So that was my first experience with like lost time at
Yes.
Skinwalker Ranch. And I don't want to know what happened, but something definitely did. Because my sister and I both didn't even notice the time. We just all, as far as we knew, we drove straight from his ranch into town. And it was like 1 a.m. when we showed up, which is impossible. So,
And
yeah.
there's so many things going on there. You have an alien connection, you have an ultra terrestrial connection, you have something possibly to do with the Fae, but then you also have the feds and black budget projects and all sorts
Yeah.
of things that,
It's too crazy for me. It's
yes,
too crazy for
it's
me.
Joker's wild on what might have happened.
Yeah,
And
so that was the last time I went, and like I said, I don't intend to go back. I know that my friend Jason Andrews, and you know Jason, he was thinking of
hell of a
maybe
good guy,
coming up.
absolutely.
He's a great guy. He wants to maybe see it sometime. If he came out here, I'm sure I would take him out, but that would be it. You know, like it's not like I'm gonna go out for really any other reason. Because,
I
like I
wouldn't
said, I
blame
did
you.
it for years and years, and I have so many experiences from there, and I've been interviewed so many times about Skinwalker Ranch specifically, and so, and even on my podcast, we did an episode. So if people are interested in a lot more of the stories, crazy stories, it's on the podcast. So
Which
yeah.
I admit to, I have not listened to encyclopedically.
Oh no,
Um,
that's
but I just getting my feet wet and listening to it, it's like, wow, this guy's got a lot of stuff here, and it is really interesting. You know,
uh,
there's a
yeah.
lot there. And I definitely encourage anybody listening to this to go and check out Adam's podcast because well, check out everything he does online because it's a lot. And
I get around.
there's some material you're gonna love. Absolutely. Um, I know that the ghost hunting was a big part of stuff you did, maybe when you were
Yeah.
younger. Got any particularly interesting stories you would care to share?
Hmm. Well, okay, I'll tell you one about this place back in the early days when I was in a group. This was probably, 2005, around then. There is, in Salt Lake City, there is a train station, the big Union station there, where trains would come and go. And they built a huge, like, shopping mall center on the train station and combined it. And then they built a nightclub into the side of this station that was built in like 1909, and the club was called the Depot. Well, the owner of the club contacted us multiple times, my group, to come out because women were getting assaulted in the women's restroom by an entity.
Just so we're
This,
clear, this is a nightclub, but it wasn't dudes. It was
oh,
like a
no,
ghost.
sorry, yeah. No, it was a ghost. This was an entity, a black shadow figure that would come, and the bathroom is It's like out of a horror film because you're in this old 100-something-year-old, you know, I think it held trolleys at the time, the nightclub
Oh, wow.
section. And so the bathroom's upstairs above the nightclub, so like, 50 feet up. And just imagine like a 20 stalls of bathroom stalls just in a row,
Oh, wow.
just all bright red, and then just it's like The Shining. It was given The Shining vibes. And we went there the first night we went there, the sinks started turning on by themselves. And I don't think these were those automatic ones at the time yet. Some of them were not. And they were going off, and then the bathroom stall doors started slamming one at a time. And we have this all on camera. And we did capture the actual picture of this entity, and it's completely a man's outline just peeking out of one of the stalls at the end in the darkness. But he was so
Wow.
black that it completely blacked out the red of the door of the stalls. Well, that's all fine and good, and that was a really cool case that we worked on. But we'd gone there probably a dozen times. But one of the times that scared me the most, and I don't get scared often, I was walking up to that women's restroom to meet my friend Jim, who was on my team, and I saw him walk out of the bathroom, and then he just kept going straight across the hall, and then this person who I thought was my friend just walked right through the wall in front of me, and on the other side of that wall is a 50-foot drop down to the train station, the grand terminal area with the booths and stuff. But I watched a man just appear in front of me and then walk into a wall. I don't think I've ever screamed on an investigation, but that was the first time. And
No one would blame you
Jim wasn't
there.
even
Yeah.
up there. Jim was downstairs getting his equipment, and so I watched a full body apparition just like jumped out right in front of me, and it was a man, and it was a tall guy, had to be at least 6'5", because my friend Jim was around there, and he was a really tall, and so it had to have been this entity that we'd been documenting. But yeah, and then that place, it never really did get rid of. I mean, we never were able to kind of help them with, my team would connect people with the church, or healers, or whoever they needed to help cleanse places if needed. But I remember this place was one of those that just they never got rid of it. And then eventually they closed. So I
Wow.
don't know the whole situation, but it
It's
was
kind
a
of a
pretty
lost
negative
cause type
thing.
of, like, this is really
Yeah.
bad type of situation.
But
Wow.
it was pretty crazy, especially back in those days when I was just kind of starting with the whole scientific approach of documenting and stuff. But yeah, things like that. If I get startled, then it freaks me out. But if I know, like, I hear something happening on the other end of a building, I always run towards it because I want to. I mean, that's why we're there, right? To see what's going on. But
That takes some courage, my friend. That does.
yeah, I might have drank as well back in those days, a little bit more. Um, no, I was young. I wasn't afraid of anything. Now I'm old and tired, so
Have
maybe
you
not
had
so
a
much.
lot of the experience, which is rare, of like interacting with non-human entities where there's kind of a back and forth? Because I know that's pretty unusual. Like often
With
they display
non-human.
themselves, but they don't really converse. And that may not be a thing that's happened because it is pretty unusual.
Well, it definitely happened in Skinwalker Ranch. That's where I would go back to for sure. I mean, um, remember when I told you earlier how I left and didn't go back for like a good 10 years?
Yes.
So the time that I went the last time, I brought a friend of mine from LA to come over because she'd always wanted to see it. And we were with Ryan, my friend Ryan, and we were in his car, and he brought a laser pointer, and we would do this thing where we would kind of shoot it up into the sky, and we would get responses back from the sky, of like a laser just like the one we were shooting up into the sky, but it'd be coming down. So there's those laser beams again. And then
Oh
that's when we saw
wow.
this big ball of light kind of approaching us, maybe like 50 yards out in the sagebrush. And it started getting closer. And if anyone who knows or has read stories about Skinwalker Ranch, the orbs, they're very notorious for being like a negative energy that's it causes people to completely lose their mind when they're around these orbs. Like it the only way I can explain it is it's like the land is completely screwing with you and giving every sort of deepest fear that you've ever thought of into your mind. It's like implanting it so that you're just terrified. And that's what was going on
Man.
here. Is we were feeling all these feelings of terror for no reason. And I remember I told Ryan, I think we should go now. I don't I think I'm good. Can we
Don't blame
leave?
you there.
And he's like, oh, because he loves that place. But he did reluctantly get in the car and start backing up. Well, when we're backing up this vehicle, the whole time there was this tree to the right of the car, and it was about 8 feet tall. And I remember the tree bent over and looked into the mirror while I was looking behind. And it wasn't a tree, it was a gray alien. It was the
Oh,
grays that people speak of when they talk about, Whitley Strieber in the book Communion I read when I was a kid. It was that. And I, I don't even know. My friend saw it. She never came back again to Utah. She
I gotta say that that
never
might
came
cure you
back.
of ever wanting to be there. Yes.
And weird thing, my friend who's she's extremely religious, very Christian. She's not into anything kind of dark or whatever, but when she went back home to California, something came back with her to the house, and it has followed her ever since this experience. She has poltergeist activity now to this day from back in like 2011, 2012, and she's moved multiple times, and it just keeps coming to wherever she moves. And I know that that came from this experience and the ranch, because I also started getting things that kind of followed me around and still do, but I don't deal with it the same as she does. I kind of ignore things mostly now because I have to. But something, yes, something definitely followed us from that last visit. And I didn't want to know what it was, so I didn't go back for a long time.
I don't blame you there. That has been the major impediment to me getting more personally involved in investigations is I don't want anything clinging on and following me home, you know.
Yeah.
That's a pretty terrifying concept, you know. As, you
Yeah.
know, experiencing some things without doing that. I don't need them coming home with me and being clinging on, you know, no, no thanks, you know.
Because, like I
And
said, when we would do paranormal investigating, I always knew we'd be dealing with, a residual haunting or maybe a poltergeist, maybe something negative, but never something that possibly came out of a spaceship. I mean, I don't know, came down from the sky from a portal. Um, and so that's why I try not to mess with those kind of things, because I know how to deal with the other stuff.
hmm,
I've had, my 40 plus years on Earth to figure all that out. But yeah, this other place is not something I want to figure out necessarily.
it seems like a pretty unique locale that should be only entered into with the greatest caution.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Seeing people that we would bring over the years to the location, I noticed that when people had a certain reverence about it, when they would come with respect, like I always do, we would be okay and things would be okay. But when people would come in with, I don't know, their attitude or just negative intentions, you could always tell. It's like, yeah, we'd be in for a crazy night. So that was the other thing too. It's like I'm not worried about me when I go to these places sometimes as much as I am about the people around me, because it really does make people act differently. and lose control of like their actions for whatever
Wow.
reason.
Wow.
And
That I don't think that gets commented on enough. That the dangers and not just but the effects, you might just say, put it in a more neutral way, they're not always just visible and obvious and physical. These things can get in your head, is to put it mildly.
yeah, I think so. I've seen people. I've seen people completely change. I've seen people's faces completely change while I was out there. The way they were looked, their eyes. I mean, it's crazy. And the other thing with Skinwalker Ranch is you'd be there with six different people. Every single one of you would see something different at the same time,
Wow.
you know?
Wow.
But you would all have an experience. It would all just be completely different. And we would even be filming it and we would see like mountains on the ridge across by the ranch and we would tell the lights to do stuff and they would move in the direction and we would just be in awe, just kind of like shouting. And you can hear us all on camera, but there's nothing happening in the film. Like it's on one of my videos, my early videos, but you can see us just like losing our minds over something that's not happening, and that's weird.
That is
I've never
extremely weird.
I've never
And it
experienced that.
makes you wonder, how is something being projected into your mind, into your brain?
Yeah, I think
It,
so. I mean,
and is this technology? Is this really spirits, or is this somebody with a really sophisticated laptop that's just sending you energy? It's
I just
tough to
don't know.
say, you know.
But the last thing I'd say about this area is that if you are afraid of something and you go out there, it will make it appear to you. It will make whatever you're afraid of happen, if that makes any sense. It plays on whatever fear you have and it will start to materialize out there in the desert.
Not gonna
So
lie,
many
that
stories.
sounds pretty terrifying. That's pretty
Yeah,
terrifying.
I liken the place to like an angler fish with this little light that hangs
Oh
over
yes,
it,
dangling out there to
and you
draw
just
you
get
in
closer
with.
and closer until it's too late. And
Mhm.
I have gotten too close too many times. So
Wow, wow.
yeah,
Hey, Adam, can we pause for 5 minutes?
yeah,
Okay, great. Let's just do that very briefly. So you were mentioning, Adam, that you had had some UFO encounters and that you had done some UFO research. Could you elaborate a little bit?
sure. I don't know if by research you mean I looked up into the sky and awe and was like, oh, what is this?
Yeah,
Then
that'll do
yes.
it.
Um, well, I think I told you earlier I'm not a big outdoorsy type person, and the reason I'm not is because when I was a kid, my dad used to go deer hunting every year, and he would drag me along. And the deer hunt always fell on my birthday in October,
Yeah.
which is just kind of sucks for a kid because I didn't get to do fun stuff. But where we used to go deer hunting was up near Fish Lake National Forest, which is also where this phenomenon called pando with the aspen tree that's just one big organism. Have you heard of this?
I've got to tell you, I have never heard the term, let
Oh,
alone the phenomena. Please.
so I didn't know this either, but I guess aspen trees are they kind of interconnect with their roots into each other, and it's almost like a hive kind of mind that lives together. And there is a section of trees that is the largest. It's all one singular tree, I guess, but it's acres and acres and hundreds of acres of this aspen tree, but it's all connected as one organism. And there's a lot of paranormal phenomenon connected with it that I'm not super well versed on, but that's where I used to go deer hunting every year. And I'm kind of like connecting it now that I've talked to like our friends AJ and Sarah because they're really into it. And so they could help us both out. But
Yes, yes.
when we would go out there every single year, there would be weird, strange lights in the sky. I remember we were driving to our cabin and it was dark out. And we had a light that was behind us on the highway and it kept getting closer. And we thought it was a motorcycle, a big bright light. And it just kind of got right up against the back of his truck. And then it shot up and over our truck and then got in front of us and dropped down on the highway. And it was this huge bright light. It clearly went over our car and then got in front of it. That's the kind of things that we would see out in this area. And then there were many instances, many, which is crazy, where I would get lost in the forest and my dad would have to find me. And I'm talking hours and hours. And to me, it was just a matter of minutes. And so
Wow.
I have more of this lost time that I spoke of. And
I bet that was kind of a high pressure situation considering this is deer hunting season. There's like a lot of people in the woods with guns, and then the kid's gone,
yeah,
and
yeah,
wow.
yeah, there were times, I mean, ooh, it wasn't good. I mean, my dad was not happy. There was one time like I was gone for like 3 or 4 hours, and all I did was turn around and turn back, and he was gone. And there's just something about these woods, these trees, these aspen trees. I think there's something going on that's like interdimensional as well. And then if you were to go over the mountain, you're looking over at Skinwalker Ranch. So it's all kind of like this triangle of land between that and another place called like Strawberry Reservoir, which is another place I'd have like lost time experiences. But it always happened when we would do the deer hunting. And then I remember watching around that time, I think Fire in the Sky came out, that movie about
Oh yes,
Travis.
Travis Walton. Yes, yes.
And I remember watching that film and just something inside me just knew that I don't know. I'm not going to say I was abducted by aliens, but maybe. I don't know. But there was something about
I
that
won't
film that
rule that out
terrified
at
me
all.
in a different way that was unlike anything else. But it was also familiar because there were many times where we would see flashes of light. I'm talking like the sky would turn to day out in the woods, and then who knows what happened. But I haven't been out there since. And then that place is also, it's got Fish Lake, which they have a whole story about like a Loch Ness type monster in that lake as well. So there's all sorts of weird stories in this land. And there's a lot of that here in Utah, like I said. But
If I can just butt in for a second,
sure,
is Fish Lake a like natural lake or is it a man-made lake?
it's natural.
Okay.
And it's actually very deep.
Ah,
It's a glacial lake, I believe. From the there where I live used to be covered in a tropical rainforest. There was a inland sea here that went. I actually, when we were building our house, we were digging up trilobites and seashells underneath our cornfield here in Utah. So there's so many, and then like I said with the dinosaurs, there's so much ancient history here that you're walking
yes.
on top of.
And I don't want to like talk over you, but that warm inland sea went all the way to Wisconsin. And we
Oh
have
wow.
a park very nearby where I live here in Milwaukee that has life-size models of all the creatures that used to live like many, many thousands of
Oh,
years
that's
ago
awesome.
in the inland sea. Everything we live in used to be underwater
Hmm.
and like well underwater.
I know that's so
And
crazy.
yeah, it's a weird thing.
Who knows? Maybe it'll be ocean frontier in Utah again once California falls off into the ocean, right?
Yes,
Hopefully
indeed.
not. I have family out there. We'll let them hang on for a little bit more. Um, but yeah, it's crazy. Anywhere, I will say this: if you like weird stuff, come to Utah. Just don't move here because we have too many people. We would love to have you visit. You can move here, Vincent. That's fine. But I'm saying in general, oh, you don't want to live here, guys. It's too crazy. The it's a nightmare, but it's definitely a place to come visit.
To butt in with the irrelevant, you don't know how close I came to living in Salt Lake City.
Oh, really?
Many years ago, I had gotten my law license and I'd gotten my law degree, gotten my law license, and was in competition for a job as a federal lawyer in Salt Lake City, Utah. And
Oh,
I was ready
wow.
to go. Circumstances, it didn't work out in that
Oh,
direction. But yeah,
well,
that
that would have been cool.
in an alternative reality, that's where I ended
When
up. Yes,
maybe you
yes.
did in the other, in another dimension, right?
I
Um,
don't rule that out.
yeah,
Yes.
me either.
Fascinating,
Um,
fascinating
that is
place.
funny. And I once almost crashed in a plane in like near Milwaukee. So I guess,
Oh wow.
but I didn't. We had to do an emergency landing. It was
Oh
during a
man.
snowstorm. But
If
that's,
I don't mean to pry, but at like General Mitchell Airport or at the little one,
it was the
which
main one.
is
I don't know
okay.
anything of, yeah.
General Mitchell's,
Say it
yeah, it's a
again.
huge airport where I used to work.
Yeah, yeah. That was the one. And they had to bring us down. I mean, people were flying out of their seats. It was a whole thing. We had to bring the plane down and de-ice everything and stay there for at least a few hours, I remember. I was trying to get to JFK, but I remember that was my first time going to New York, and I was like, if I die on the way before I get to see Times Square, I'm gonna be so mad right now. Um, but we lived. So
Yes, yes, indeed. It's crazy
yeah,
the connections that happen and almost
yeah,
happen, you know?
I know. I know that's so funny. But that's what life is, you know? It's a series of crazy events that just
Yes.
connect people.
No matter what your life is, there are crazy things that have happened in it, if
Yeah,
you're willing to acknowledge them. Yes.
it's true. So many
Um,
synchronicities everywhere.
yes, yes, indeed. I don't have a theory for this, but I just have this sounds real scientific, but I have a feeling. But I have a feeling that somehow synchronicity is like moving behind the scenes in everything that happens, you know?
I agree.
And,
I think so.
you
Yeah.
know, it just seems like it to me.
There's
Um,
been too many times in life that one of my closest friends here that I've known for 20 something years, she and I both come from California, opposite ends of the state. But um, we met in college, and we found out that because we both are singers, and we did. I've always been a singer and a performer, and her best friend growing up was also one of my best friends that did competitions out here, and so but we didn't even know that we had this mutual friend until good 10 years into our friendship. And it's just like no matter what, we were supposed to be introduced to some people in our lives, I think.
and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I didn't know that you were a singer. I'm not going to ask you to perform because that would be that'd be a little bit over the top.
Good. I'm just
But
kidding.
what genre did you like to sing? And
Oh, I
please, if you
do
could elaborate just a
everything.
little bit.
Well, this friend I was speaking of, we were in a group, a jazz ensemble, and we sang a lot of jazz music. We actually traveled to China and we performed, lived at the Shanghai University out there, and we got to perform there in Beijing and just travel around the country. And I've always sang jazz music. I've performed in Vegas and different, because I was the lounge singer like in Sister Act, at the beginning where she's like singing and nobody's listening, right?
Oh wow!
But as long as my
I,
paycheck came, I was good.
yes, yes.
So
That is fascinating, man. I did not know that about you, but
yeah, that's my big passion is music, and then the paranormal, of course. They both kind of
Mhm.
go hand in hand. But yeah,
They
music's
do
my
seem to
favorite.
go hand in hand, do they
Yeah.
not? To shift gears, what may seem like hard, but not really, I don't think. Tell me about reincarnation. What are
Tell
your
you about it?
thoughts? I can tell you
No,
about it, but
there,
everybody's heard my
yeah,
stuff.
no, I, it's so crazy. I believe I'm more willing to believe in reincarnation than maybe say the religion I was raised in, which was being Mormon. Um, I would be more likely to believe in reincarnation. And there's been so many stories over the years. Speaking of unsolved mysteries, I remember they had a whole episode or two about reincarnation, and just I always found it so fascinating. But I I don't know. Anything's possible, you know.
Would you say you have any memories from a past life?
Do I? Well, maybe. Actually, now that I think of it, yes. So I'm trying to, how am I gonna tell this story very quickly so I don't bore you?
I
Okay.
assure you
So,
nothing you're going to say is going to bore me, man. It's been pretty damn good.
well, okay. So when I was back to my group, when I was investigating, the first place that we ever went that was like our big place to go to with the team was the Queen Mary, the ocean liner in Long Beach, California.
Yes, yes.
And the Queen Mary, for people who don't know, it's the last example of a great ocean liner that you can go see. I mean, there's it was built in 1936 anyway. It's like just a supreme example of Art Deco and just a different time and a different life. And the first time we went on this ship and were investigating is when I saw a full body apparition with my team. And this was like 4 months into joining the group. And I just remember like saying out loud, I'm like, am I ready to see this? Because I don't think I want to see this. Like, I was terrified when it was happening. But I remember, long story short, we I saw a full body apparition in the third class ballroom. Uh, Came home, was haunted by something for months that would keep coming into our room at night. I kept seeing this man that was in like a bow tie, and he would just be smiling. I mean, again, like The Shining, I guess. And circumstances connected to show that what I was seeing was not just like a fluke. You know, my boyfriend at the time was seeing it as well, and he was very against the paranormal. And it got to the point where I would start having these vivid dreams every night, and it would be on the ship, and it would be of me on the ship. And long story short, I started buying things like off eBay, like the silverware, the plates from the ship when it was in service. And I just remember when I went on the ship, it's a maze, but I was able to I knew where everything was when we were in there for the first time. And I'd grown up in, like I said, partially in California. I always knew what the Queen Mary was, but I'd never gone into it. But if there was a different life that I'd had before this, I am pretty sure it was on the Queen Mary during like the 30s or 40s, because I still have dreams about the ship to this day. And it's one of those very few places in the world that I have like a very strong connection to, and don't know why. So who knows? Maybe I was the captain.
That makes complete sense to me because I am 99 point whatever sure that I died in World War II in the Pacific and was in the Navy. And, you know, just so much deja vu that makes no sense outside of that context that
Yeah.
that's the most powerful spiritual experience I've ever had.
Oh, that's so
Was
neat.
I was 12 years old, and in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, there's this thing called the Experimental Aircraft Association fly-in. They have it every year, and they bring out these vintage warbird planes that were in previous wars. And I was 12 years old, and they were reenacting a battle in the Pacific. And they had these two old tyrant. Now, this is 40 years ago. So those guys are still alive.
Yeah.
And they were in World War II, and they were up on the podium describing what was going on during this battle was being reenacted. And I'm 12 and I just had this like it was like a panic attack. It was like just hit me so hard that it was so unfair. So I was at that battle too. And I don't get to be up on the podium and tell you what happened. So I died. And
Wow.
that was it was so I couldn't tell any there's nobody you could tell that to, you know what I mean? And I
That's
was
so
like,
interesting.
the hell's going
Yeah.
on with you? What's your deal? But it all made sense in context. And that was the
You know,
most real experience I'd had in my life, you know. And
listening
and
to
there's a number
you,
of things that link to that, but go ahead.
well, no, I was just saying, listening to your story, it's kind of like connected just now in my mind, just now, connected some things because over the years I've investigated a lot of places, but the places that have to do with World War II are the only ones where I've had these weird deja vu memories. The Out here on the border of Nevada is a town called Wendover, and it's where the Wendover Air Force Base still is, and that is where the Enola Gay went the night before
Oh,
it went and
wow.
bombed Hiroshima. And we had free reign of that place, and I remember there was a night when I went there with my team and we went into the commissary and there was a boxing ring set up. And it's like, it was all like I'd been there before and I knew exactly what had been going on in this. Because this place has been shut down since, gosh, the 70s or 80s. I mean, it hasn't been used other than for the movie Con Air, which is a great
Wow.
movie. But I remember like we did this whole thing where we played the actual music they played at the last dance with the wives before the guys went off from the Air Force Base. And I just part of my thing where I have this thing where I'm always able to go to a place and tell you what's kind of gone on. I see things like a flash, like a black and white film. And so the places where I have this the strongest has always been on the Queen Mary, at this Air Force base, and then in Pearl Harbor. When I was at Pearl Harbor 10 years ago or so, I had another episode, kind of like what you're talking about, where it was all very like distressing. And I
Yes.
don't know why I was so upset because I'd never been, but at the same time, I had been. And it's all of this is from the same kind of time period because the Queen Mary was in service. It was called the Grey Ghost during World War II. They used that ship during the war, and so much went on with the war. You know, Winston Churchill did his whole thing there aboard the ship for D-Day. So it's all connected.
Oh, yes.
And so part of me really thinks that if I did have a previous life, I think it was definitely during the World War II area of time.
Wow,
So
that's fascinating, man.
who knows? See, now you just made me start thinking again. Gosh.
I have that effect sometimes.
Have
But no,
you,
that's
speaking of
really
reincarnation, have
fascinating.
you heard of this cult that's in Malaysia? That's like a reincarnation cult for Steve Jobs. Have you heard of this?
Oh no. Um, I was like way more open-minded until you said Steve Jobs.
Well, no, it's ridiculous, but I just remembered it because we covered it on my because I have an episode on reincarnation on my podcast, and there are these Malaysian monks, and after Steve Jobs died, they said that he's not really gone, he's just on a different plane, but he's floating in a glass palace above the headquarters to Apple in Cupertino, California, and that if they do a ritual where like they all eat an apple and then they throw it into the ocean, and they said that he is coming back down to earth any day. So we should stay tuned for that, is what I'm trying to say. Speaking of reincarnation,
Only
it's
laughing
real.
with you.
People are just, they never fail to amaze me. It's
I have,
interesting.
I honestly feel if you put a plastic rabbit on a stick and stuck it in the air, somebody'd worship it, you know?
I
It's a
know.
sign, here he comes.
It's true.
Um, yeah, I just don't have the highest opinion of Steve Jobs for
Oh
so many
yeah.
reasons. And
Uh-oh, what did I do? What did I open up
no, no,
just
no,
now?
no. You're good, man. It's just
Tell you what, I want to throw my iPhone against the wall most days, so if that
well,
makes you feel better.
they'll make it run slower if you don't like get the new one quick enough.
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started. Yeah, I don't know why I have an iPhone because I hate it. I hate it.
I can't blame you. My kids have them and they kind of think maybe they should have stuck with the Android, but I guess my beef with him is he's always rated as this super genius. And yet
Yeah.
it was Wozniak that did most of the tech and he did most of the advertising. And
Wow.
then as a person, I mean, and I hate to be judgmental, but this one little time, I'm just gonna be a little bit judgmental, okay?
That's fine. It won't leave
He
this room. Just
Well,
kidding.
and all the people who listen to us, yes, anyway. Um, I don't care. The people can say what they want to say. He didn't want any relationship with his daughter. And that
Oh, I
like
don't know a whole lot about him actually.
he disowned isn't the proper term, but he just like agreed to financially support her, but I don't want any relationship.
Hmm.
And I just felt like, man, you're a billionaire. I mean, really? That seems
Too
awfully
bad.
harsh. And then, of course, he died. And yes, I take responsibility for this. You, Adam is not responsible for anything I'm trashing
Oh
about
my
Steve
God.
Jobs right now. So
Hey, at
it's
least you're
just
not
me.
trashing Taylor Swift because you could never recover from that in this
I don't
world.
necessarily have the courage for that.
I do.
But
Sorry. But yeah, Steve Jobs, huh? I didn't know that about him.
yes, and he died, and I don't wish, that on anybody,
Yeah.
but he got cancer early on. They told him, you have cancer. And he tried to treat it with basically, he believed if he was an extreme vegan, it would just go away. You
Hmm.
can't cure cancer with fruit juice. And
You
he had,
can't?
surprisingly not.
Wow.
And he was a billionaire. He could have had the greatest medical care available. And he just blew it off until it was too late. And that's why he's not here. And
Wow.
I just felt like there's a real huge element of arrogance there that I just, man, really? So
Well, I
yeah,
definitely got that vibe from him for sure,
mhm,
the arrogance thing. But a lot
yeah,
of these, you know, a lot of these people, these billionaires are pretty arrogant.
yeah.
Um, Otherwise, we wouldn't have things like the Cybertruck on Tesla, or is that what it's called? I don't know. They're so ugly. Have you seen them? Have you seen these
Um,
Cybertrucks or
are you
from
talking about the
Tesla?
thing that takes pictures for Google Earth?
No, it's a truck that was just introduced this past
Oh, it's
year.
driverless?
No, but it looks like I don't know. It looks like a like a easy bake oven with wheels. I can't explain it. It's so ugly. You have to take a look. But they're like $150,000, and people are buying them. And
Hmm.
it's like a flex or something like. But it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen. It's nothing about it is a truck. Um, but
A friend of mine cued me to the fact that if you buy a Tesla, and again, I can't legally vouch for this, but I suggest everybody to look it up because I do believe this to be true. They make you sign quite a waiver. You'll never take it through a car wash. Because just driving a
oh,
Tesla through a car wash can destroy it. And
I know that you had to sign papers for this truck that you can't sell it within a year because people realize how stupid they are once they buy them.
uh-huh,
I didn't know about the other, but I mean I wouldn't be surprised. My friend just rented a Tesla the other day, and
mhm,
she was miserable because I had to like drop her at a hospital to start charging the car so that we could have dinner, and then hopefully in about 4 hours there'd be enough for her to get down the road a little bit. I mean, we're talking like 8 hours sometimes to get a decent charge without paying $20. at a
Hmm.
supercharger, and I'm just like, at this point, just get a car, because we
It's
all know
yeah,
you're not driving a Tesla to help the environment. You're doing it
it's
because it's cute and fun or whatever. I don't know.
it has a certain status symbol, but well and
They're
no.
dumb. When you have to when you have to use your two fingers on a 20-inch laptop screen to like find the shifter for your car, or like, I don't understand how you live and you don't die while you're driving, but like, it's insane to me. Like, I just would like a gear shift, please. Or how about some vents for the air conditioning? There's like no vents in these. I'm like,
Oh
what are
man.
you driving? What is
Hmm.
this thing? I mean, but if you
Yeah.
drive a Tesla, you guys just know that I still think you're good people. I just don't understand the
Don't
car.
judge anybody by what they drive, but I tell you, I had such a high opinion of Elon Musk, and then he opened his mouth and started
Oh
talking,
yeah,
and it all just dropped
it's true.
straight down it into hell. And
I don't know what he thinks about sometimes, but I mean, he makes good money, so something must be right.
well, when
But
your father owns a diamond mine in
really,
pre-Mandela South Africa, you're probably in a pretty good
you're
situation.
probably good. Okay. I
Yeah.
wasn't sure. I'll have to remember that
Yes.
for the next
Also,
life.
I involuntarily puke when he trashes immigrants
Hmm.
because, as the congresswoman from New York City pointed out, you are an immigrant. You came from South Africa
We
to
all are.
Canada to America. How can you
No,
come on your third country? You're telling people we should close the border. What? Who do you? I mean, come on, Yeah.
well, I guess all the money in the world can't really fix your head, right?
No,
Sometimes.
sometimes quite the opposite.
Yeah.
I'm meaning to do an episode on just that, what I call Elvis syndrome. And that's not because
Oh,
I don't like Elvis Presley, because I actually love Elvis Presley. But towards the end of his life, he got trapped in a situation where everybody you know either works directly for you
you have a
or
yes man
is trying to,
everywhere.
yes, is trying to suck money out of you.
Yeah.
You have nobody who can walk up to you and say, I think you're making a large mistake. And that is so common. It
It
happened
is.
to Elvis, it happened to Michael Jackson, it's happened to many people, And
Yeah.
wealth can kill you, And it's
Absolutely can. I
probably, something for a different time, but that is something I've
no, a
noticed
bit
over the years.
like I said, being a singer and stuff, I've met a lot of big singers, and won't say any names, but yeah, they live in this fantasy world, and they're great. A lot of them are really nice people, but they've they've never been told no, at least not in the past like 10 years or something. So of course they're being like, they're they're in a special world where everything is they can do no wrong, and it's very damaging, like you said,
Yes, it's
to
not a
have
good
that.
thing. It sounds cool, but if
Yeah.
you actually live that, it will kill you, or at least wreck your
No, you've
life,
got to have friends that can kind of, you know keep you on the ground a little bit. I know that I
Mhm.
have to have them sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
We all do.
And
So it's too
it's
bad.
yeah, it is. It's a thing. Um, we've gone pretty far afield, but hey, if you don't
Well, we
mind, I
must be chatting.
I have a couple of things. Um, so we kind of touched on it briefly, but cryptids. You've had some experiences. You have some theories. Bigfoot, Sasquatch. What are we
Well,
talking about?
well, I know that here where I live, they're the biggest town next to me. It's called city. It's called Provo, uh, and they have a beautiful canyon, Provo Canyon, up above. And there have been many stories of Bigfoot up in this canyon. This is where Sundance is, if you know
Oh,
Sundance.
yes, yes. The film
Um,
festival, right? We're talking about.
well, it's the actual resort where he came up with the film festival, and the film festival's not far. It's in Park City and other places. But yeah, the actual it's an actual resort called Sundance that's owned by Robert Redford.
Oh,
But there have been, this a friend of mine who has a husband that works in the that is in the military told me that, oh, they're doing stuff up the canyon this week. And I was like what? And she said, it's Bigfoot. And I'm like, oh, is it? Because I get a lot of crazy stories from people, and I'm like, oh
sure.
yeah, Bigfoot, huh? But then I started seeing the military helicopters, and started seeing, because I don't know what's going on, but there was a time, especially in the past like year or so, where I see military stuff, military helicopters over my house all the time now. It never happened before. And in that same canyon, about 6 or 7 years ago, people on the freeway, and myself included, watched what looked like a Walmart parking lot in the sky floating above. I'm talking football fields of lights in a formation in a triangle. Came
Wow.
out of that canyon where I'm just speaking of, floated over the lake, and just sat there. I mean, people were pulled over on the freeway. None of us knew what it was, but it came from this area that they were, at the same time they were up there with the military doing stuff, and I don't know what they were doing. I don't claim to have any clue what they're doing, but they're doing something up there under the ground, is what people have been saying. So they're saying there could be like an alien base underground, like they say with Skinwalker. They say there's maybe an underground sort of base there too, and it's always the same place where people start seeing Bigfoot. So I'm starting to think it's all like interdimensional. Um, at least out here by where I live.
Just a little audio is going on there, but
But when my 90-year-old mother-in-law calls on the phone, sorry, what was that? Sorry.
oh no, no, I can hear you now fine. There's just like
Oh,
5 seconds where your audio went a little weird, but it's
oh,
cool.
oh! I was just gonna say, when like my 90-year-old mother-in-law is calling, and she's like, can you guys come to my house? I'm worried that there is going to be an alien invasion above my house. So and she never asks for anything. So when everyone is seeing it coming out of the canyon, I mean, something's going on over here, right next to the house. So, but Bigfoot, I don't have a whole lot of experience with him. I would love to meet him someday, as long as he doesn't like try and rip my face off or something.
I
Um,
don't think they really do that.
yeah, well, that's good.
Um, you know, if I may share, and I've shared this before for previous listeners, but I can repeat myself ad
Of
infinitum.
course.
So, you know,
Hey, it's your thing. You do whatever you'd like.
the two things. One, I'm sure you're kind of aware that Utah probably has more federal government stuff going on there than any other state in the country.
Yes.
A whole lot, including tunnels, like probably more tunnels than anywhere. A whole
Oh,
lot.
yeah. Especially out by Skinwalker Ranch too.
Oh
When
yeah.
you buy property out there, you're not allowed to dig. Like,
You own the
what?
land rights, like, but just so
Yeah,
far down. You don't own the mineral rights. You don't own the
correct.
underground. No, no, no.
Yeah. I don't know. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but if I
No,
don't
no,
say it, I'll
please.
forget. I just watched a thing yesterday, and I never thought about it in my head until I saw it. But they were connecting how all of this crazy interdimensional stuff is happening in our national parks, and in all of our national parks have activity. And why is that? Why would the government protect all these spots of land in random spots, and why is there so much of it here in Utah? Um, and the places that I've told you where I've seen stuff, they're all around these national parks. Same with out in Moab, which is where I'm going to be heading next week. tons of UFO activity by the Arches National Park. Um, yeah, sorry, but continue your story. I just
No,
thought
no,
about it.
please. What you said was important because that's all real. That is a thing that goes on. Um,
Yeah.
just as far as I was talking about cryptids, I have exactly one experience ever, and it only lasted like 5 seconds. So
Oh,
I'm way down I'm not much of an experiencer.
hey, that's still cool though.
I
What
I have
happened?
thanks for asking. Um, I was in the not okay, I live in the city of Milwaukee. On the other side of the state, it's extremely rural, and that's where a lot of my relatives are from. And
Okay.
it's called the Driftless region, and it goes from the west side of Wisconsin into the eastern side of Minnesota and a little bit of Iowa. And it's called driftless because it was never crushed by the glacier.
Is that
So,
like by Eau Claire and stuff, or?
um, yes, but I'm not sure whether Eau Claire is included.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's that far west,
Okay.
and it's hill country. It resembles Appalachia,
Okay.
and well, where I grew up, which is in rural Fond du Lac County, and everywhere else it's flat. It's real flat because it was flattened by the glacier in the Ice Age.
Mm-hmm.
But the driftless region was never flattened, and it has a whole different vibe. I mean, when I was out there a few years ago, I mentioned to my wife that, I could see a leprechaun here, like a real leprechaun. I
Yeah,
wouldn't be shocked by that. It just has an entirely different vibe. And
that's cool.
in oh, it's a unique place. It's fascinating. And a House on the Rock is there, and Frank Frank Lloyd Wright did a bunch of stuff there. It's very interesting. Anyway, in 2019, Mother's Day weekend of 2019, um, my wife and my kids, we went to see my grandmother, who is currently 103.
Oh my
And yes,
goodness.
yes. And she was fully cognizant well into her hundreds. And we went over there to see her. And as we're driving along, um, we saw a cryptid. Um, what I saw looked like, now my wife was driving, so I'm looking out the window. Let me just, are sounds coming from your end or my end?
I don't hear anything coming from you.
I
Are you
think
hearing
both.
something?
Yes, my dog's trying to be co-host, but never mind.
Oh,
So anyway, disregard.
okay.
So yes, this is 2019, Mother's Day weekend, 2019, and we're driving down this it's one lane each way, uh very small road, and it's carved out of a mountain. So there's rock on one side and a drop off on the other. So we don't have a lot of options of stopping and pulling over. There's no place to pull over.
Yeah.
We're driving along and we saw a creature come out of a cornfield. And this is common because it's so hilly in that area that farmers will plant crops on the bottom two-thirds of a hill, and then the top of the hill still be wooded. And we're
Okay.
driving along, and we saw something come running out of the cornfield through a approximately 100 yards of empty, like vacant lot, and get
Wow.
into the woods. And what I saw, I would describe more as a huge mutant bear.
Hmm.
It was, that's what I perceived. It looked most like it was multicolored. It was enormous. It was like the size of a small car. like a Toyota Corolla.
And it was
Um,
walking just on like its two back
well,
legs.
that's the catch. The hill was so steep that it seemed like it had to get down on all fours and hop to get
Oh,
up the steepness
okay.
and into the woods. And it was colored like the most natural thing I can compare it to was a red panda. Um,
Wow.
which okay, there's no red pandas in Wisconsin, and this
No.
thing was like 10 times the size of an actual red panda, which isn't even really a bear. It's more related to like a raccoon. It was just this enormous beast, and it got down on all fours, but I got the impression, as she did, that it usually walks upright, but it had to get down there to hop and climb its way up into the woods. And we didn't
So
talk about it
strange.
at the moment. But when we got to the motel, I said, "So what did you see?" She said, "I saw Bigfoot." She was like, 100% that was Bigfoot. And she
So
described it
cool.
as looking like the orangutan in character in the most recent version of Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
And that it usually walks upright, but to get up this steep hill, it had to get on four legs and kind of hop. We both identified
Wow.
the colors, and we both identified the hopping. And thank God she saw it too. Because if I was there alone, I just thought I was having a psychotic break or I'm having an hallucination or something. Because it was so bizarre. And it only
That's
lasted a few
crazy.
seconds. Yeah. And
That is cool that you both saw it. That
oh,
is really cool that you both saw it
that was a
though. Wow.
godsend. Otherwise, I just think I was just stripping.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm fine seeing Bigfoot that way too. Like just in passing. I think I'm good.
yes. And
I don't want to get to know him.
it wasn't aggressive. It was the opposite. It I got the strong vibe. Now it didn't communicate me. There was no communicate with me. There was no
Yeah.
telepathy. There's nothing like that. But it just I got the vibe. I didn't know because that it didn't know we could see it, and it just wanted to
Really?
get out of sight as fast as possible. And it was running
Wow.
away from us. And so it wasn't scary at all. We saw it for several seconds, but that was it. It was several seconds. We definitely both saw relatively the same thing. And it was just trying to get away. And it got into the woods, and you couldn't see it anymore. And we had cars behind us and we couldn't pull over. We just had to go on. But that
That's pretty
happened.
neat. Yeah.
And I have no, and I've racked my brain with every possible thing it could have been, and none of it makes any sense. It wasn't, I grew up in a very rural environment, and I know what a bull looks like. I know what a big, like large pig looks like. I know
Yeah.
what all these things look. It was none of those things. It was not a normal animal, but it looked very physical at the moment we were seeing it. It wasn't like
Have you been back
ethereal.
since to like go and try and
We
spot him
have been
again?
back, but did not see anything.
Yeah.
In fact, I think we've gone down the same exact stretch of road, but nothing.
Hmm.
And if I
I'm
had to
not surprised.
guess, and I'm just speculating here, but if we had been able to pull over and had been able to like park somewhere, I don't think we would have been able to go up into that wooded area and find like a nest or a cave it hangs out in. I don't think it works like that. We might
I
have
don't
found,
either.
yeah, I think it went back through the portal.
Yeah,
It,
that's exactly what I think happened.
it was 100% physical while we were seeing it, but then it was gone.
That's exactly the stuff at Skinwalker Ranch every time.
Yeah.
It's
Like they
coming
don't
from out
live
of
there.
something.
They don't have
Yeah.
a habitat.
No.
They just show up there and they're gone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. That reminded me of the sheriff out there in the town of Duchesne by Skinwalker Ranch. He kept getting calls by locals that were seeing a pterodactyl like flying around in the sky out there,
Wow.
and then also seeing
Should we?
safari animals like elephants,
Uh-huh.
bears, elephants, giraffes, and like I think
things
they
that
said
can't be
gorillas.
there. They can't,
Yeah,
they don't exist in that environment.
and like dozens of people were seeing this, and and even the sheriff saw. I don't. It's in the book. I believe it's in the book Hunt for the Skinwalker, which is a really good book that kind of tells the story of the poor family that lived on the ranch before Bigelow came and took it, and all the horrific things they had to deal with. But it was a lot of that. Things coming out of portals, going back in. That's what I'm more on board with that being what's going on instead of like, oh, they're hiding just real well in the trees.
We'd
No.
have a body dead or alive if that was the
Yeah,
case to me. That's just my gut
I think
level
so.
perception. Yeah. Um,
Wow.
that's, but yeah, that's a very interesting connection then. Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of places in this world when you feel like what you said, when you can just tell that the place is different. Um, I've witnessed that so many places here in Utah, and also a few other places in the other world, in the other worlds, in the other world I've been to. No, when in the world, like another spot that's similar to what you're saying, I think, and like would be like the Great Wall of China. When I was climbing that, I kind of felt like, oh, I'm in a spot, or at Tiananmen Square. I kind of felt like I was in a spot where it was an ancient energy that I can't describe except for the way I feel here in different spots in
But
Utah.
maybe that things don't happen there. They happen there for a reason. Like,
Yeah,
it's a place of power or something, you know. But yeah, I've kind of wondered if when Bigfoot or Sasquatch or what you want to call him goes through the portal, is he having the weird experience? Does he end up in our world and
maybe
like, what the hell is this? Let me get out of here as fast as I can.
that's very possible. Uh I don't want to know. I hope it doesn't happen to me. That would suck. I'm like, can I please just get back to a place
You say,
that has like
"Get-"
air conditioning and Wi-Fi? Um, because yeah, I don't know what's
You've
going on,
spoken
but
a very wise thing.
yeah, but it's
I'm
like I
not
don't
a
know why I
back to
didn't put
nature guy.
together about the national parks and stuff and the protected wildlife areas that the government put under protection around this country, and then all of the paranormal stuff that goes on in them. I don't know why I didn't even connect that in my head. But there's got to be something to it because I've never not had a paranormal experience in like a national park or a national forest, and I've been to plenty, especially here. Uh, so that's very cool. I'll have to
You make
research
a
some more.
great point that I had never really considered that, you know, those places that are designated national parks, those are not like, there's not a popular vote or something. Those are
Yeah,
very much decided by elites, going all the way back to Teddy Roosevelt and that.
exactly.
And maybe there's things that they want preserved and sealed away from the public eye.
Like with the
Because,
Grand Canyon and Egypt, have you
yes,
looked into
oh
that?
God, yes,
Okay,
and the
me too.
Smithsonian and not dinosaur, well, that too, but the Smithsonian and giant bones. And
Yes.
yes, and I can't let go of that thing. And it's allegedly been debunked, but I don't accept the debunking. The Egyptian shrine in, or whatever it was, temple, I don't know what it was. Nobody knows.
Yeah,
In the Grand Canyon,
the Grand
absolutely.
Canyon. Yes.
I've heard of
It's
that.
so interesting. And I was gonna say, what was I gonna say? I think I just had a stroke. What is happening? Sorry. Oh
It's very
no, I
minor.
forgot what I was gonna tell you. Oh, it couldn't have been that important, but no,
If it's
it's
important, it
super
will
fascinating.
come back.
And I think that now I have to look and see, but I think Utah might have the most like national parks in the country, right? I think it's
I would not be surprised by that.
Utah or California. It's one or the other, I think.
Mm.
Um, but makes sense because it's so weird here. I'm telling you. You have to come see for yourself, but you can't get taken away by anything in a portal. So because there's a lot of stories here in these national forests here in Utah where people just walk a few steps away from their family and they're never seen again. Never. Which is what I was
Yes.
telling you earlier happened when I'd go deer hunting. And it's not like I was an absent-minded child or anything. Like
No,
I
no.
was just turning my back for just a minute
I
and then it just be
wonder,
separated.
honestly, Adam, I wonder if you came within a whisker of having a missing 411 experience and they just decided to kick you back or whatever.
I don't I think yeah, there's so much that
Because a lot of that stuff
we
is
just can't
not
figure
made
out.
up.
No. And that makes me excited and that's what makes life so interesting. Just all the crazy unknowns that
Yes.
we will figure out one day, just not maybe today.
The search goes on forever, but we do find some interesting things now and
Yeah,
again.
I love that.
If you don't mind, I'd just like to hit you up with a couple of last questions.
Sure.
Um, and there's no right or wrong answer. I mean, this is, come
Good,
on.
because I only have wrong answers for you today. Oh, I mean right ones. Excuse me.
Sometimes those are the best.
Yeah.
Are you involved with any mystical or magical practice?
You know, I'm 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 big into tarot. Like I'm big into tarot readings. I
And
love.
I hate to butt in, but I was about to say I was going to exclude tarot because I love that myself.
Oh yeah,
And, I don't throw the cards, but I do love getting the readings.
I
And
do
they've been
too.
so insightful from some people.
So I don't do a ton anymore. I used to read cards for people. I used to read cards for people all the time, and it was like it'll come and go in my life when I'm feeling like I can do readings. And when I do a reading, they're usually very spot on. And if I'm going through something super crazy, like we talked about earlier on our own, if I need some guidance and stuff, I will pull them out. And it has always kind of helped me. I also am very big on geology and I love a good crystal. I mean, I won't lie. I love a good crystal. I love collecting them. I'm very spiritual. I'm not religious whatsoever. So I'm big on the astronomy and astrology. It's all
Astrology
just,
is the most ancient science.
yeah,
And
it's very
crystals, I
interesting.
will never mock because we don't know 1% of what's really going on with crystals.
All I know is, and I was told a very good point by someone when I went to this huge crystal shop in New York the last time I was there, and she said, I know that these things all say they're for a certain ailment or an issue, but just go walk around the store and go to like what speaks to you and makes you want to grab it, and that is what you need for whatever you're dealing with at this time. And I always kind of look at it that way now because I don't know. I think that's the same reason I with Utah because it's so paranormal. There's just so many different minerals and rocks in the earth here, so many formations, and I do think that it all is connected and it creates a lot of phenomenon as well. So I do love that kind of stuff. But I'm not, I mean, I haven't done any like ceremonies or anything yet. Mainly because I don't have any friends that I could do that with. Like I would, but not anyone out here in my neighborhood. They're not probably having any of that. But how about you? What's
Well, I'll be honest. I have a real uncertainty about dealing with any entities that can talk back. You know what I
Oh yeah.
mean? I try to avoid that really. I attended a spiritualist church for a number of months
Okay.
and got a lot out of that, to be honest, mostly just like-minded people. But the
Yeah.
problem was, I was like the only one showing up who didn't really care about talking to departed relatives because
Yeah.
most of my relatives were either still alive or, they've
Yeah.
moved on and they're doing their own thing. It's cool. I just like the fact that they believed in reincarnation without making it all about karma and trying to get out of it. Because
Okay.
I don't want to get to nirvana where you don't exist anymore. I just want to be me over and over and over,
Yeah.
and have adventures and stuff.
And see me, I'm kind of like on the opposite end today. It just depends on the day. If you ask me, I'd be like, oh, I'm tired. Do I have to do this again? Maybe talk to me tomorrow. But no, I get what you're saying absolutely. But um, yeah,
One,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
one of the most influential books, I read it in high school, and it was called The Star Rover by Jack London, the same
Okay.
guy who wrote To Build a Fire and White Fang, and he was a big deal
Oh
like
yes,
100
yes.
years
Okay,
ago.
that I knew that name sounded familiar. I
Yeah,
read White Fang. I
yeah. Oh, he was a really good writer. And he, I don't know if he believed in reincarnation personally, but he wrote a hell of a book about it called The Star Rover. And
okay.
he described the narrator is the protagonist is this guy who gets sent to prison, and two fellow convicts tell him how to meditate and access his past lives. And he's had all these past lives where he had adventures and stuff. And he doesn't have any karma. He's not trying to reach nirvana. He just likes to come back and do stuff. And I said,
Wow.
yes, that's what I want to do.
Okay.
You
Well, then
know,
I hope you get to.
and
That's a good way of looking at it.
that kind of impressed me as much as anything. So that's kind of,
Wow.
yeah, where I come from. And the spiritualist church, they were cool, but it was very focused on talking to the ancestors. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, my ancestors have kind of moved on. They're doing their own thing, and I'm good. And so we kind of
That's
parted
true.
ways. But
I'm really big on if uh, not looking for. I recently lost my mom, and I told you earlier.
yes, yes, and that's a heavy
I
thing. I understand.
it, but it's like I don't have any. I don't need any message from her. Is I guess what I'm saying right now, because I kind of think I'm where I need to be right at this time in my life. But there have been other times when I've lost other relatives where I will get that sign, or I actually have people come up to me all the time, psychics, mediums. It's crazy. I'll be walking, it doesn't matter where I am. I'll just be out at a festival or at a bar one night. I remember I was having a really bad night when I was in my early 20s. I had gotten stood up on a date and I was like really upset, and this girl came up to me and she's like, "Hey, do you have a grandma that was like named Lillian?" And I'm like,
Wow,
"What?" Because that's like her name.
that
And
came out. Wow. Go ahead, please.
I said, "Yeah, well, yes." And she said, "I see this little farm and there's lilies. I see lilies everywhere." And she was like an award-winning florist. Like she grew lilies in her farm in Texas. And I didn't know her because she died when I was just a kid, like maybe two. But she said, that your grandma, she just follows you around everywhere and she just thinks you're so hilarious. And she doesn't know why you're upset right now because you're going to find the guy you're supposed to be with. And so just, you need to chill out, is what she's saying. And I was like, really? And then she said something crazy. She's like, tell your mom the picture she's looking for of hers in her cedar chest along the side. And I'm like, how are you coming up with this? Um, the next day I called my mom and she was looking for that picture as I was on the phone with her before I even told her the story. So things like that have happened all throughout my life, and I don't ever ask for it. It always just appears when it needs to, and that's kind of how I feel. So I think, yeah, I think people get what they need one way or the other if you just kind of are open to it, but I don't need to go searching
And
necessarily.
once you've had that experience, nobody can tell you anything. You know what I mean?
No,
That nobody
it's
can
so
explain that
crazy.
away. That
No.
happened. And, you guys
This
can
was
prove
this
whatever
was
you
way
want to
before
prove.
social media and stuff.
Yes.
There
Yes.
was no way. But I've had a good handful of experiences like that that I'll always remember. And that's just, yeah, super neat experiences. And I think it can happen for anyone if
Oh,
and when
yes.
you need it. But
Yes.
yeah, I don't usually pay money for that kind of stuff. I think that
No.
gets a little
And
weird.
I don't, I'm not like 1,000% on this, but generally I have a policy that if I have to pay money, then it's probably fake. If it's now, there's exceptions and
Yeah,
people need
there
to
are
be paid for
exceptions
their
for sure.
skills and stuff. But I have way more credibility with somebody who's just, I just need to tell you this, than somebody who's like, well, you can schedule it, but it'll be $125, that there's two different things. That's my
But I
impression.
understand people have to make a living, of course.
Oh
But
God, yes, yeah,
but
I
you know, at
fully.
the same time, in I once had a woman call our team to the house because she said the devil was living in a television set in her basement. I mean, and then
If I was like the devil, like the main guy, I think I could do better than that. Okay.
I'm just saying I've been told some crazy things by
Oh, I
people,
bet.
and I've always kind of just tried to keep an open mind. But yeah, more times than not, dealing with the paranormal, you do get some wild stories that are just not possible
Oh yeah.
because they're happening in their mind and nowhere else, which is fine. I'm all for a good psychotic break now and then. I've had one myself. But,
Yes,
nothing
yes.
paranormal necessarily.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's, and I have got to say, the takeaway from all the years of doing this for me has just been meeting people that I would never have met before, like you, or
Same
just,
here.
just it, and that's the best part to me. Um, so it's
That's
very cool.
something, if I may just jump right in, interrupt you and go on
Yeah.
from there. But John E.L. Tenney, I don't know if that rings a bell.
No, you're gonna have to remind me. Um,
He's spent about 30 years in this world of the paranormal and investigations. He
okay,
started out ghost hunting and then he kind of found maybe the ghosts were aliens and I don't know. He's
okay.
written some, and then he got into JFK assassination conspiracy and short
Oh,
story, he's one of us. Okay.
okay.
And he said, at the end of the day, if all we've done is spend a couple hours talking about stuff that we like with people we like, isn't that enough? And I thought
That's exactly enough.
that's
Exactly
pretty
enough.
cool, man. You nailed it down right there.
Yeah,
Yes,
that is
yes.
why, and that is why I still do it, even though I have some trepidation because I have been in groups that it's ended very dramatically between team
Oh,
members
yeah.
and things. Well, you know
Yes, there
how it
can be a
is.
lot of politics
Um,
and office politics and people
yes, a lot
sharp
of
elbows.
personalities, a lot
Yeah.
of and a lot of it is just ego and it has nothing to do. Like I got into this myself because A, I wanted to prove that I wasn't seeing things as a kid, but also B, I always wanted to be able to help people. And
Yes, yes.
when you're not doing that anymore and you're just doing craziness to get on television, that's when I have a problem. But for the
Same
most
here.
part, for me, I've had nothing but good experiences. There's been a handful of of crazy stuff, but I've met lifelong friends, you know,
Absolutely.
and that's the best part for me. And yeah, it's just a hobby. It's not like we have a PhD in this. I mean, I guess you could, but do you? I don't know. And they say, what, 10,000 hours in anything makes you an expert or something. So maybe
I
we're
don't think
experts? I don't
anybody's an
know.
expert in
No one's
this.
an expert in the paranormal. I've always
It
said that.
it won't let you
Um,
be.
no.
Like
So,
if you get too close, it'll just pull away from you and
yeah.
give you crazy stuff to chase your tail over, you know?
But
My
yeah, at
impression.
the end of the day, humankind, we just love to tell stories. We're storytellers, everyone is. And that's
That
kind of
is
what this
human
all is at
nature
the
in
end of
a
the day.
nutshell.
And that's what makes it fun. And it'll always it'll always be fun for me at the end of the day, you know?
I I certainly do. Hey, honestly, Adam, I think you've kind of wrapped it up for me.
Well,
You
thank you.
you've hit everything I could say.
Okay.
If there's anything you'd like to add, please tell people where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook under the Paranormal Polynesian Travel. And again, my YouTube channel, it's first and foremost a travel channel because I love to travel, but it's always going to have that weird kind of twist underlying everything where it's just kind of fun. You're going to see a new place that's weird, hopefully, and we're just going to get into some trouble. And I it's never scripted. I always just I also should mention I'm on the autism spectrum, so I just am very just all over the place sometimes. But you know, people tell me it's entertaining sometimes. So
That can
I
be a strength way more than a weakness. I think most people who accomplish something at a high level are probably on that spectrum, and I toss myself in there,
well, and that's a whole other
hopefully.
podcast for you for another day too about the correlations between being on the spectrum and the paranormal activities because I truly believe that is why I've had so much in my life, because I think there's a connection. But yeah, so
That
if
sounds so right to me.
yeah, if your listeners are interested in just like a weirdo person just running around the country, then yeah, that's a fun channel to just hang out. And I've got like 500 videos on there, I think, at this point. So,
You've been to
and
the
then
Great Wall of China. I mean, you're not just,
oh,
local.
I went to the Great Wall of China drunk and I fell down the Great Wall of China, but that's a story for another day. Um,
If you go to
yeah.
Strange Realities, we'll hear about
Oh,
it.
I'm really trying my best to come out because yeah, I really want to come out this year, so I hope I can. But yeah, yeah, there's the YouTube channel there, and then the podcast is called To Believe or Not to Believe. That is the podcast. That is the longest name of a podcast. I did not come up with the name, but it's on anywhere you can find a podcast: Apple, Spotify,
Sketcher,
Amazon. Yes. So
Stitcher,
just come
not
on by.
Sketcher, but yeah,
Stitcher, yes.
Stitcher,
Just come on
Sketchers are
by and
shoes, but
check us
yeah,
out. But yeah, that'd be that'd be cool if anyone wants to come watch. But we've got some neat places coming up this year too.
well, thank you so much for joining me this evening, Adam. I
Thank you.
really appreciate it. This has been some
Yeah,
fascinating conversation,
it was
and
very
I
nice to
hope
talk with
to
you.
renew it very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
All
you.
right. Well, hey, folks, this has been The Weird Part. I am your host, Vincent Treewell. We've had some really fascinating talk with Adam Taula here. And I encourage you to go and listen and watch everything he does because it's awesome. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
listening and good night.